Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You're welcome to the MMA Corner's prediction and preview show. Now, I know what you're thinking. Hey, Josh got a whole lot more handsome. I mean, look at that beautifully structured face and perfectly pitched voice, but sadly, that's not the case. Josh is experiencing some technical difficulties, so I am your host, Jose Youngs, lead news writer on the MMAcorner.com. And first and foremost, this preview and prediction show is brought to you by battlebomb.com, the only pain reliever with a knockout power. The only pain reliever, folks. So, with that, let's get right into it. Big weekend in UFC fights tonight. We got two fights. We got UFC Fight Night 53, I believe. Yes, UFC Fight Night 53 and UFC Fight Night 54. Neither of them are in the United States. One of them across the pond in Sweden, home of Alexander Gustafsson, but Alexander Gustafsson is not on the card. We'll get into that in a moment. Also on Saturday, UFC Fight Night 54 and 53 and 54. 53 is in Sweden, 54 in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada. Yes, UFC is heading to Halifax, the most eastern part of our neighbors to the north. Headlining that fight is Rory McDonald, Aries, number 2, number 3, depending on who you ask, pound-for-pound fighter in the UFC's welterweight division. Apparent heir, GSP's heir of the welterweight division, facing off against former Strikeforce welterweight champion turned UFC fighter, Tarek Saffiedine. I don't know what to tell you, folks. This is a couple of great matchups on paper if you are a huge UFC and fight fan. UFC Fight Night in Sweden is a big deal to the people in Europe. Headlining that event is Gunnar Nelson, adopted Irish son, teammate of Conor McGregor at SBG Ireland. I don't know what to tell you much about Gunnar Nelson. He's pretty much the new Fedor. He has one expression, and that is the only thing you're going to get. Fantastic fighter, undefeated, putting away guys left and right, coming off the spectacular fight against Zach Cummins at that epic UFC Dublin card where he was featured in the co-main event to his teammate, Conor McGregor, putting away Diego Brandao. He will be facing off against Rick the Horror Story, UFC journeyman. And I don't say journeyman as in the way Conor McGregor said it, as in he left somewhere. I say journeyman as in he has been in the UFC for a very long time. He did have the win streak back in the day. He does have a win over Johnny Hendricks, but he's probably most known for being the man to lose to Charlie Brenneman after Charlie Brenneman stepped in on 24 hours' notice. Rick Story was riding a 5 or 6 fight win streak. His opponent got hurt, and Charlie Brenneman beat him on just one day's notice. Not the thing you want to be known for. But it's a perfect matchup for building Gunnar Nelson up. Rick Story is one of those guys you don't feed him. You match him up against an up-and-coming welterweight, similar to one of his last few fights. UFC gave him Kelvin Gastelum, winner of TUF 17. Well, won the TUF 17 middleweight, dropped down to welterweight, undefeated, rattled off a few nice wins. It gave him Rick Story as an essential gatekeeper test fight. It was a very close fight. Kelvin beat him split decision. Rick Story could have won, but that's a whole nother story. Kelvin beat him and is now fighting in the co-main event of a Mexico City card. So a win over Rick Story is something. If Gunnar Nelson beats Rick Story, he will be vaulted into the top 15, top 10 of the 170-pound division. A win over Gunnar Nelson and Rick Story is on a two-fight win streak, and honestly, he could be on a 5-fight win streak right now. He's 3-2, but his only 2 losses are to Mike Pyle, I believe at UFC 160, which was another very close split decision, and to Gastelum, another split decision. If one judge reads those cards in his favor, he's on a 5-fight win streak. And we're not talking about Rick Story, the gatekeeper. We're talking about Rick Story, the resurgent career, possibly within shot of a top 10, top 5 opponent. Now, like I said, I don't know what to tell you about this one. This is a Fight Pass card. It's another one of those ones that it looks fantastic on paper. If you are a fight fan, it's a big deal in Europe. not a lot of U.S. American fans will get excited for this card. There's the Dublin card did huge. That was a Fight Pass card, but that was because you had the Conor McGregor freight train coming through your computer screen. He also had Gunnar Nelson in the co-main event, which did help build Gunnar Nelson a little bit. But I don't know. Like I said, if you had put this fight on UFC 178 in the prelim card, this is a money prelim. This is a money fight for to appear on the prelims. I don't really know. Like, Gunnar Nelson is a star in his native of Iceland. I've seen tabloids in Iceland talking about Gunnar Nelson's haircut. So he is a star in Europe. He just hasn't really reached the American audience like his teammate has. Probably because he doesn't talk himself up. He has no expression. He doesn't have the $20,000 watch that 5 people died to make, as Conor McGregor put it. So, but he is talented. He's undefeated. He does have some submission wins over some very not top tier, but he has beaten DeMarcus Johnson. He's beaten Zach Cummins. So he's beaten everybody he should have, but he's also very, very small for the division. A lot of people say he needs to drop down. I mean, I don't even think he cuts weight to make 170. Maybe he cuts like 2 or 3 pounds similar to Frankie Edgar when he was the lightweight champ. So you could see him maybe drop down in the future, but right now, as long as he keeps winning, he's going to stay in that he's going to stay 170. And he's very unorthodox fighting style. He tends to come out karate style, similar to a Machida. Like, he'll come in sideways and throw hook kicks and question mark kicks and side kicks, push you against the fence, take you down, and just cut through you like butter. And look for that rear naked choke guillotine. I mean, he is very underrated on the ground. Renzo Gracie, you talk to Renzo Gracie about Gunnar Nelson, you better have at least an hour on your hands. So if you have a man with the last name Gracie throwing praise at you for your ground skills, that's something, folks. It's something. In the end, Rick Story is a great wrestler. He is a complete mixed martial artist. He's not just a wrestler. He's not just a striker. He does, like I said, have that win over Johnny Hendricks. He has trained at TriStar in the past, so you can't count him out. And he is the bigger fighter going into this. But I'm on the Gunnar Nelson fan. I'm on the fan train right now. It's either going to be a very, not boring, but one of those, it's going to be similar to the Jeremy Stevens Cub Swanson fights, where just 5 rounds of not back and forth, but one guy, they're just picking each other apart. There's not that big power shot. I mean, yes, they'll get caught. Gunnar Nelson did get caught against Zach Cummins with a few fights, but Cub Swanson did win that fight not dominantly, but he won it. He did enough to win. It could be that type of fight, or Gunnar Nelson's just going to cut him apart like butter on the ground as soon as it goes. He's going to keep the distance with his sidekick. He's going to do his karate stance. He's going to do his hook kicks and his jabs and his counter punches like Machida does. Well, if that fight goes to the ground and Gunnar Nelson's on top and he gets the back, I don't see Rick Story pulling it out. I think Gunnar Nelson does win. I would love to see him face the loser of the Halifax card, because the winner of that could be next in line for a title shot, but we'll get into that in a few minutes. I would love to see him face the loser, possibly 7-8, or maybe even Kelvin Gastelum, the winner of Jake Ellenberger and Kelvin Gastelum at UFC 180 in Mexico. It's another great card. It's another great fight. Co-main event, another one I don't really know what to tell you. It is Max Holloway versus Akira Corsani. Akira Corsani, of course, is on that tough, I want to say 14 with Mayhem and Bisping, where John Dodson and Diego Brandel won. I believe he was on that season. Another exciting fighter. He lost to he's coming off the loss to Poirier, but he did tag Poirier a few times, so you can't count him out. Obviously, he's one of those just tough, durable fighters, but he's fighting Max Holloway. I believe Max Holloway is the youngest fighter in the UFC history to have 10 fights under his belt. I believe he just broke Stefan Struve's record, which is a coincidence because he's fighting in Stefan Struve's hometown. Max Holloway is one of those Hawaiians in the mold of BJ Penn. Anytime, anywhere, any place he'll fight. he does have the loss to Conor McGregor, but he is coming in on short notice, and he's the only man in the UFC to go 3 rounds with Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor did hurt his knee. Take that for what you want, but he survived a very game Conor McGregor in Boston when they gave Conor McGregor the prelims and he came in when the lights dimmed. I mean, that, I don't know, that's a whole nother thing too. But Max Holloway is the real deal. He's 22 and a half, I believe. He should, I think he beat Dennis Bermudez, which again, I think 160, 162. I can't remember which fight card that was. It was in Vegas. I believe it was the Cain Velasquez Bigfoot 2 fight card, which I believe was 160, but correct me if I'm wrong. I believe he beat Dennis Bermudez. Dennis Bermudez shouldn't be on the 7-fight win streak. That was Max Holloway's fight. He did beat Touchy-Feely at 172. He beats Cassius Clay at the Tulsa card. In no idea how that did not win fight of the night. That fight was very exciting. Ended up putting him away, did eat some shots, was getting Roy Jones for a while with a head bobbing from his opponent with a stiff jab. So another exciting fight, but this is Max Holloway's fight to lose. He's only 22. He hasn't even hit his prime. Already has 10 fights under his belt. He is a very strange-looking man, skinny, pencil stash, can barely grow any facial hair, but he's the real deal, man. I don't know what to tell you. He's not dominant, but he's better. He's more well-rounded. And Akira Kurosawa was originally supposed to face the Korean Zombie, and the Korean Zombie's return after just destroying his shoulder and his knee and all kinds of stuff against Jose Aldo at UFC 163 last July or August, I believe. Again, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not always 100% on it. Again, I don't know. It is an exciting fight if you are a diehard MMA fan. Max Holloway is one of those fighters that is great for a prelim main event because you see him fight, you might want to buy the main card. You'll have that thing, but again, it's not that exciting if you're for casual fans. Casual fans aren't going to be buying Fight Pass to watch this card. He doesn't have the name of Conor McGregor, so people aren't going to buy Fight Pass to watch Max Holloway, Akira Kurosawa, Gunnar Nelson, and Rick Story fight. But like I said, if you are a diehard MMA fan, I recommend dropping the $10 a month for the main event, because Gunnar Nelson could very well be a future champion at welterweight and or lightweight. And you want to see him if you want to see him coming up, like how many people can say they saw George St. Pierre fight in the early days? Not many fans nowadays. There are a lot of fans out there, but a lot of fans now that came in riding the Brock Lesnar train did not see George St. Pierre fight against Matt Hughes in his first 2 fights. They heard about it. They've seen the Fight Pass cards. They didn't watch it live. Not a lot. A lot of them have, but there are a lot of them that haven't. They came in later on. They rode that UFC 100 train. They found out who George St. Pierre was. But you want to, for those few people who saw George St. Pierre get armbarred by Matt Hughes, that was something special. You knew something great was coming from George St. Pierre. And the same thing was with Gunnar Nelson. He's a future champion. And you're going to tune in. You're going to watch him win. And you're going to love it. Right? Now, if he wins, I would love to see him fight the loser of Tarek Saffiedine versus Rory McDonald, which the main event of the Halifax, Nova Scotia card, a very strange place to hold an event, I know. Tarek Saffiedine, a former Strikeforce champion, picked apart Nate Marquardt. Nate Marquardt was the Strikeforce champion, went up against Tarek Saffiedine, and was the main event of the last ever Strikeforce card. Picked him apart with leg kicks. And if you want to see something gruesome, Google Nate Marquardt's leg after the Tarek Saffiedine fight. His leg looked like hamburger meat. It was just this red, swollen mess. And that was all from Tarek Saffiedine. That was Tarek Saffiedine's coming out party. A lot of people thought Nate Marquardt was going to steamroll him, enter the UFC as the Strikeforce welterweight champion, and just get thrown right into the title mix. Pretty much the opposite happened. Tarek Saffiedine not necessarily shocked the world because he was fighting in the main event for a reason. But he picked Nate Marquardt apart with leg kicks. Nate Marquardt has faced off against the Damian Maias, the Anderson Silvas, the Chael Sonnens of the world. Tarek Saffiedine came out of nowhere and just wrecked his whole leg, his head with body kick, with kicks to the head and legs. Now, Rory McDonald's another story, though. Rory McDonald essentially walks around at 200 pounds and drops down to 170. He is a massive welterweight. He is what Joe Rogan likes to call the new breed of the MMA fighters. But I don't even think he's the new breed anymore. We've seen Rory McDonald in the cage. He is a monster. He is the present. He's no longer the future. George St. Pierre is gone. He doesn't fight anymore. As Rory McDonald puts it, he feels freedom now. He's not living under George St. Pierre's shadow. They're both Canadian. They both train at TriStar Gym. They were ranked. George St. Pierre was number 1, and Rory McDonald was always 3, 4, 5. He was always, will you two fight? Similar to Will Cain Velasquez and DC fight. Will Anthony Johnson and Rashad Evans fight? They all say no. Rory McDonald seemed to get angry at the question. He's like, I will not fight George St. Pierre. George St. Pierre is gone now. That opens the door to Rory McDonald finally becoming champion, which everybody expected him to be when they first saw him fight. Yeah, he's one of those guys that came in, learned striking, learned wrestling, learned jiu-jitsu, learned Muay Thai, learned judo, learned everything. He didn't come in with a specialty. George St. Pierre did not come in with he came in with a karate background and learned wrestling. So Rory McDonald is the same thing. He's huge for the weight class. He is coming off his victory over Tyron Woodley in probably his most impressive performance. He didn't get the finish, which Dana White was a little peeved about, because I believe he should have finished him at 174 in Vancouver. He was the co-main event. That was by far his most impressive performance outside of his earlier days when he was just mauling people with his grounded pound. But he was going up against like the Che Mills of the world, and what he did to Tyron Woodley was just art. It was him standing in front of opponent who had no idea what to do and just plastering him with all kinds of fights. If you've seen Three Ninjas, he lit up the dummy. And I hope somebody gets that reference. He lit up the dummy against Tyron Woodley with pretty much every punch imaginable. Punch, kick, knee, elbow, anything. Prior to that, he did beat Damian Maia in the fight of the night at 170. And that did snap his losing streak. He did lose to Roy McDonald at UFC 160. Roy McDonald did lose to Robbie Lawler at 167. Most people assume that if he had won that fight against Roy McDonald, he would have been the one to fight Johnny Hendricks, not Roy McDonald at UFC 171. Roy McDonald lost to Robbie Lawler at 167. A lot of 7s and 6s thrown there. I apologize. But Roy McDonald has said that he needs to get back to what he does best, and that is just to put people away. He seemed very tentative against Robbie Lawler, similar to when he fought Jake Ellenberger. He got all kinds of flack for fighting for his very lackluster and very strange performance against Jake Ellenberger. Jake Ellenberger, similar to Tyron Woodley, just had no idea how to approach Roy McDonald. Roy McDonald was standing there, and he was like dancing around his feet. When I say dancing, it wasn't being cocky. He was doing like the Ali shuffle, and he was just shuffling around, jab and just jabbing. All day was jab. Rarely any kicks. There were a few kicks thrown in there, obviously, but very strange performance. I feel like if you put the pace on, Jake Ellenberger was in a world of hurt, and Jake Ellenberger's face wasn't that. It didn't look like he got in a fight. It looked like he just kind of got jabbed like maybe 100 times. And he did walk away with the win, but Dana White was pretty peeved at both of them, especially Rory McDonald, for being so dominant yet so boring. It was such a strange performance because if you remember his fights with Carlos Condit, again, Carlos Condit, former interim champion, outside of Johnny Hendricks, outside of Johnny Hendricks and Matt Serra, no one has put George St. Pierre in the kind of trouble Carlos Condit did. He caught him with that head kick, was on top of him, landed some vicious ground and pound, but before that, Rory McDonald was putting a beating on Carlos Condit. And Carlos Condit ended up doing what Carlos Condit does and came back and won and cut open Rory McDonald's beautiful face as blood dripped from his eyes. But Rory McDonald was, I believe, 21 at the time. Maybe his one of his first few UFC fights, and he was putting a beating on a future UFC interim champion, future top 5 welterweight in the world, at an age most people are graduating college. So Rory McDonald has been the real deal for quite some time. And I do believe he will beat Tarek Saffian. Tarek Saffian is one of the best all-around strikers. He has the best leg kicks in the 170-pound division. Like I said, his last performance in Singapore was almost a year ago. Not a year ago. Like 9 months ago in January. It was the very first Fight Pass card ever. Not a lot of people saw that one, and that's a shame because watching Tarek Saffian fight is like just watching a ballerina. It's just beautiful to watch. He rarely throws punches or kicks or takedowns without purpose. If he throws a kick, it's because he's going to do damage. If he sees your hands up, he'll kick your legs. If he sees you backing away to protect the legs, he'll just question mark kick your skull. So Tarek Saffian is the real deal, but I believe Rory McDonald will win. I think Rory McDonald has already done enough for a title shot, but it's hard to pass down a main event, especially in your home country. And a win in a main event over former Strikeforce champion is absolutely enough to earn a title shot against the winner of Johnny Hendricks and Robbie Lawler, which is now taking place at UFC 181. Check out the MMAcorner.com for all the details on that. So I can't say how it'll happen. Rory McDonald has said he does care about finishes. A lot of fighters say I don't care about finishes. I just want to win. Like I want to earn my title shot. I think Rory McDonald will finish this fight. It's hard to picture where though. Because like I said, you get all these fighters. Yeah, you're good at jiu-jitsu, you're good at wrestling, you're good at ground and pound, you're good at striking. Rory McDonald's good at everything. I think his best shot of winning will be if he takes Tarek Saffian down with one of his powerful double leg takedowns against the fence, mounts him and just drop those elbows, drop those punches, and you'll see the areas of old where he just opens up this guy's face, and it's just violence personifying, where Rory McDonald will have more of his opponent's blood on his hands and chest than he has his own blood. So look for Rory McDonald to win by finish, but I couldn't even tell you which round, just because Rory McDonald has taken such a strange turnaround where he used to put away guys left and right, and then he just had a very, like I said, very odd and strange performance. It was lackluster. So, but I'm absolutely picking Rory McDonald to win that fight. And the co-main event, very underrated fight, very important bantamweight fight between Rafael Assunção and Brian Caraway. Now, for those who don't know, Rafael Assunção was supposed to fight Renan Barão at UFC 173, but he was hurt. When the UFC asked him, he said, I can't. I wasn't expecting this because originally it was supposed to be Weidman and Vitor Belfort. Obviously, Belfort got hurt. Weidman couldn't do it. They pushed it to the July 4th weekend. Barão stepped up to fill the place in. He was a champion that was available. Originally was going to be Assunção. I believe he's on a 6-fight win streak, which made him the logical choice. He had the longest win streak outside of Barão in the division. Said he couldn't. In comes a little guy named TJ Dillashaw. No one gave him a shot against Barão, and you saw what happened to that. But what happened there? TJ Dillashaw put on arguably the most impressive title performance from a challenger since John Jones defeated Shogun. I mean, when you saw that, you were like, I have never seen someone do this to the champion. John Jones didn't lose a second of that fight against Shogun. And Shogun hasn't been the same since. Similar to TJ Dillashaw beat Renan Barão from the second the fight started to the second he just turned his lights out in the 5th round. Renan Barão looked like he didn't know where it was going to be. That fight was supposed to be Rafael Assunção's fight, who has a win over the champion, TJ Dillashaw. Rafael Assunção has earned his title shot at least 2 times, and the UFC has decided to give it, not decided, but he couldn't do it against TJ Dillashaw. He didn't want to sit around. He took the Brian Caraway fight. It would have been great to see him and TJ at UFC 177 instead of Barão. We saw what happened in the rematch. Barão couldn't even make it. He passed out, cutting weight. Now that Dominic Cruz won at UFC 178, it's just going to be, you can't not give him the fight. Dana White as I already said, Dominic Cruz, former champion who got hurt, never lost his title, only got a strip because he's been out for 3 years, is going to fight TJ Dillashaw. So it's hard to not to feel bad for Rafael Assunção, who has a win over the champion, is on this very impressive win streak. And no one is saying, hey, Rafael Assunção should get the title shot for Dominic Cruz, because those people don't know what they are talking about. Dominic Cruz is the only one that can get that title shot. So Rafael Assunção is fighting Brian Caraway, who some people on Twitter like to call Mr. Miesha Tate. And if you don't know, he is dating Miesha Tate. He was the coach on Tough 18 with Miesha Tate. He is one of Miesha Tate's head coach. They are dating, not married. He was also on that season of Tough with Dotson and Dillashaw and Akira Khorasani, the Mayhem versus Bisping tough season. He was the one where, if people don't know, said he throws up before almost every fight. He gets very nervous, and if you see him, you would never ever picture he was a fighter. He's very normal looking. He wears jeans and t-shirts out. He doesn't wear workout gear all the time. He has the cauliflower, but that's it. You would never expect this person to be a fighter. You see his girlfriend, you would say she's a fighter. She's just ripped. She just looks ferocious. Pretty much the opposite of Brian Caraway. He is riding a 2-fight win streak. His only loss in his last 6 fights was to Kei Mizugaki. Very little controversial. Some people thought he won. I don't personally think he won. Did protest a little bit, but nothing you could do there. He did beat Johnny Bedford, fellow Tough cast member. Johnny Bedford, it turns out that win doesn't hold as much water because Johnny Bedford wasn't what people thought he was going to be. A couple other weird wins and losses for him. And then his coming out party, and not coming out party, because everybody knew who he was. Everybody knew what he was capable of. But even when you lose a couple fights, you have to build yourself up. And he made a huge step when he submitted the Mexican icon Eric Perez at the UFC Fight Night in Albuquerque, headlined by Benson Henderson and Rustam Khabilov. Now, another very controversial fight, and not that it didn't go to split. Brian Caraway finished Goyito, as they call him, Eric Perez, in Eric Perez's adopted American city in Albuquerque. Video replay and photos show Brian Caraway fish hooked. And if people don't know what fish hooking is, when you put your finger in an opponent's mouth and pull their mouth, you pull their head. Video replay showed Brian Caraway put a few fingers in, turn the head, and then sink in the choke. Now, he said that he didn't know he did it. When he did find out he did, he went and apologized to Perez. But, you can't look past that. I mean, fish hooking is so blatant. That was one of the UFC 1 had no fish hooking, I'm pretty sure. And UFC 1 was billed as no rules. No, fish hooking is one of the original rules of the unified rules of mixed martial arts. And if you do it and win, that's going to follow you around. And he won. It was impressive over Perez, so he does deserve the shot against Rafael Assunção. And if he beats Assunção, I can't see him getting a title shot, especially because he does have the loss to Kei Mizugaki, who just lost to Dominic Cruz. I mean, when I say lost, I mean he did not even Kei Mizugaki might as well have been a rag doll in that fight against Dominic Cruz. Does have 2 other fights, so he's 4-1 in the UFC. If he does beat Rafael Assunção in impressive fashion, he could very well skip the line. But if he pulls out one of those very boring, not boring, but it's close split decision wins, like if he pulls it to Kei Mizugaki, like Mizugaki did to him, and he wins by split decision, I can't see him getting a title shot. But if he does put away Assunção, he's possibly 1 fight away. But Assunção's look too impressive. He does have a win over the champion. If you have a win over the current champion, you're automatically the better fighter in my eyes. Even when Matt Serra beat GSP, that was Matt Serra was the best fighter in that 170-pound division. Not talent-wise, but you can't look at somebody with a belt and say they're not the best in the division. That's just a little disrespectful in my eyes, even if it's a lucky punch, which I've never really seen in a title fight. So Assunção does have the win over Dillashaw, he should win. He has the better ground game. I can't really say striking. I mean, neither of them are really known for their striking. But I see Assunção winning unless he just doesn't take this seriously, which would be very foolish of him. Because if he wins, he will get the next, not the next title shot, because that's already Dominic Cruz, but he will be thrown right into the one after that. He will face the winner of Dominic Cruz, which is TJ Dillashaw. And for all we know, Dominic Cruz will get hurt again. I mean, he's made a paper. So if Dominic Cruz gets hurt, just throw in Rafael Assunção and nobody will complain. You can build that up as Rafael Assunção has already beaten TJ Dillashaw. If TJ Dillashaw beats Rafael Assunção, that's 1-1. The lower weight classes, but below 170 pounds, are dying for a rivalry, a trilogy. Conor McGregor is a huge star, but he doesn't have that rival. You need that Frazier to the Ali. And I'm not saying Assunção and Dillashaw are talkers, and they're not going to talk trash like Frazier and Ali did, but you need that rivalry for marketing. You had that with Faber and Cruz. They genuinely hated each other. They were both 1-1. When Cruz fights Faber again, which he absolutely will, because that would be foolish of the UFC not to make, that can be billed as a grudge match. If the lower weight classes need a rivalry like that, and I don't think it will be so much as along the line they will trash talk each other, but you can the marketing for that, the campaign for that, the marketability, as people say. That's why people say Demetrius Johnson isn't marketable. He hasn't been put in a tough fight yet. Yes, he had that close fight against Dodson, but he won, and he did rematch Benavidez, and he did rematch McCall, but he won both of them. He tied McCall and then beat McCall. He beat Benavidez and then beat him even more impressive the second time. So you need that rivalry. You need that rubber match that Cain Velasquez and JDS had, or Randy Couture and Chuck Liddell had. It won't be along the lines of like the whole world stopped to watch those fights. Like, it won't be billed as the greatest, but like I said, it would do wonders for marketing. It would make sense if you see the 1-1, and that could possibly build a trilogy. And Dillashaw could have his first real competitive rival. Not rival as in they hate each other outside of the cage, but just one of those fights where you want to see who is the best. They respect each other, and they just want to be the best. And they need that, and I hope that happens, but which he will. And if he will, Assunção will win. It's not guaranteed, obviously, because nothing is guaranteed with 4-ounce gloves, but I think Assunção is a safe bet here. I don't think he's lost since making the drop from 145 pounds, so Brian Caraway is a very strange fighter to predict because he can put you away to the submissions, but he's also been in those weird split decision wins like he did against Mizugaki. But expect Assunção to win. I'm going to say second round submission. All right, moving on. Looking at the rest of this card, this is not an abysmal card because you do have Elias Theodorou, the world's, as he's proclaimed, the most handsome fighter on the UFC roster. I mean, he's on romance novels for crying out loud. People have called him that, not the heir to GSP, as in the terms of he's as good as GSP, like Rory McDonald is being billed as. He's being billed as like that sex symbol that from Canada. Like GSP is on the cover of calendars and fitness magazines, and you see the pictures at UFC Fan Expo of GSP with a shirt unbuttoned, standing there with his muscles out. Like he could be billed as that. It's a little embarrassing for him, he has admitted, but so that he was on Tough Nation, so he does have that small following in Canada. But other than that, the only fight that really sticks out on this card for me isn't even on the main card. The prelims on Fox Sports 2 is Darren Cruikshanks versus Anthony Njokuani. Darren Cruikshanks was on Tough Live. He did lose to Masvidal at UFC on Fox, so he's not the best fighter you'll get, but he's one of those exciting, just always come forward. His punches, I mean, his kicks are like punches. They can come out of nowhere. He does have that Muay Thai, kickboxing, Taekwondo style where he'll just throw kick. He'll throw more kicks than punches for sure. and they'll be everywhere. He won't just throw head kicks. He'll throw legs. He'll throw body shots. He'll set him up to throw punches. You can set him up to do the tosses. But you're going to see a lot of kicks out of Darren Cruikshanks, former cheerleader from Detroit. So other than that, though, I don't really see any other fights that really jump out at me. I mean, you got Nordine Talib, who tried out for Tough 19 and lost to Manowar on Tough Nations. You got Li Jiangliang, who just won at UFC 173. But other than that, it's a weak card for Fox Sports 1 outside of the main and co-main event. We have a lot of Tough Nations cast members. You got Mitch Gagnon on here, who's always popular with the fans or the diehard fans, but I honestly think the Sweden card is stronger than this, and that's not saying much. Both of these cards are a little weak. I don't know. It looks a little bit like a Bellator card, as some people put it on, as McKinley Noble put it on Twitter. These fights are looking an awful lot like Bellator cards. If you had taken the top 2 fights from both of these cards and put them on the prelims of 178, just swap out Roy McDonald and Tarek Saffiedine for let's say Josh Howard and Brian Ebersol. Put that on the prelims, put Roy McDonald on the main card, maybe drop Kat Zingano down to the prelims, and you have an even more stacked card. UFC 178 was something special. That could have been better. A lot of people like to say, oh, this is because of the oversaturation. Like UFC is holding like 60 events this year. So you're getting all these weak cards, like the first UFC on Fox in January, where Stipe Miocic and Gabriel Gonzaga was the co-main event, or Rafael Assunção and Brian Caraway is a co-main event, or Danny Castillo versus Tony Ferguson was a co-main event. But you have to understand, neither of these fights are in America. These fights are built around the audience they're targeting. The Halifax card is for that marketplace, the Canadian marketplace. Roy McDonald is a budding star in Canada. Half these people on this card are Tough Nations, Canadian cast members. So all of these people have small followings in Canada. They're not trying to market this card. They are trying to market this card to the world, but this is a Canadian card. Canadian fans will get excited for this card, especially Halifax. The first time you go to places like that, it's something special, similar to when I went to the UFC Bangor card. Yeah, it didn't make a lot of money, but the fans and the city was electric leading into that. I couldn't walk around the city of Bangor, Maine without seeing an Affliction shirt or a Tap Out shirt, or I would see people waiting in line, and it's going to be like that. I believe this is the first time they're going to Halifax and they're bringing Roy McDonald, a UFC superstar, Tarek Saffiedine, former Strikeforce champion. This is a fight card for that marketplace, not for the U.S. marketplace. It is on Fox Sports 1, so I wouldn't complain about it because the UFC knows what they're doing. This is going to be a good fight. The top fight is very important. The co-main event is very important. And if you want to call yourself a diehard fan, you won't complain because you never know what is going to happen. I mean, UFC 170 was billed as one of the best fight cards, and it was one of the best fight cards. But then every now and then you get that Hendo Shogun 2, which is similar to the Halifax card. It was on Fox Sports 1 and had a lot of Tough Brazil cast members. It had a lot of Brazilian fighters that American fans had no idea who they were. But when you turned in to watch that fight and you saw those Brazilian fighters fight, they put on a show. They would put people with flying knees, with submissions. They were just in these violent wars. And then you get CB Dalloway doing the shoulder roll and knocking out Cesar Ferreira in like 30 seconds. And then you get the Shogun in Hendo War Part 2 where Shogun Dan Henderson just rearranged Shogun's face. And it's going to be like that. We don't know until we see it. So I would not complain about this fight card because it's not targeted for you. It's targeted for Canada. And I would tune into this fight card, especially if you want to call yourself a diehard fan. Similar to the Sweden card. I wouldn't buy. This isn't a fight card I would buy Fight Pass to view, but I would expect people to have bought the Fight Pass card for that Mark Hunt versus Roy Nelson fight. That fight was worth buying Fight Pass over. The Conor McGregor versus Diego Randall was worth the $10 a month just for that fight. If you don't watch any fight card for the rest of the year on Fight Pass, if you don't use Fight Pass for anything else, that fight was worth it. That that was something special. People are going to talk about that Dublin card like they talk about UFC 100. That's going to be one of the most. That's going to be one of the best fight cards in terms of fans, in terms of excitement, in terms of buzz that the UFC will ever put on, because they got that Conor McGregor hype train perfectly. They marketed him perfectly. The Irish fighters went undefeated on that card. That fight was money. I would expect you to have already had Fight Pass prior to this fight card, and I would absolutely turn in just to watch the main event. I mean, yeah, you got Ilir Latifi is on the main card playing a Polish fighter. Ilir Latifi is most famous for stepping in against Gegard Mousasi on, like, I don't know, a few days' notice. He's Alexander Gustafsson's teammate, and he's undefeated since losing to Mousasi. And I wouldn't say he's one of the best. He's not a top 10 light heavyweight, but he's exciting to watch. He's one of those stocky. He can't. It's like it will be impossible for him to drop to 185, but he's too big for 205. He's perfect for a 195-pound weight class, I believe, if they ever did that. And then looking at the rest of the card, yeah, you got Dennis Siver on the card. He's a featherweight veteran. Did get caught for steroids, but you got Nico Masoki, who just lost to Kelvin Gastelum. He does have a win over Alessio Sakara, stepped in on short day's notice and won. You do got Cathal Pendred, Conor McGregor's teammate. Honestly, he is not the same caliber of fighter as Conor McGregor, but he gets it. Like that marketing, when you have to market yourself, when you get that whole country around you, Cathal Pendred gets it. Tortroying, another tough 17 cast member who's on Team Sun, and I actually picked him to win the whole fight card, the whole season going in. Didn't work out, but he's put on some exciting fights. Again, he's Alexander Gustafsson's teammate, so you're going to see a lot of Gustafsson highlights just in training and probably sitting on the sidelines watching while he heals up his meniscus. But not much to really say about these two fight cards. If you are a fight fan, you're most likely going to watch it. You have a lot of MMA to pick for this weekend. You got Battleground MMA, that crazy tournament. If anybody doesn't know, Cody McKenzie came in 1.5 pounds overweight, and he gave a pint of blood to make weight. He took blood out of his body to make weight. That's taking place tonight. I believe MFC is this weekend. You got Bellator on Friday. Daniel Strauss, obviously one of the better fighters outside of the UFC. So you have a lot to choose for, pick from this weekend. And if you can't decide whether you want to sit around and on a Saturday night, Saturday morning, when these fights take place, I would tune in for the top two fights on both cards. I would tune in to watch Gunnar Nelson, because like I said, he could very well be a future champion in 2 weight classes. And you're going to want to tell your friends, and even if not maybe even your kids, you want to tell someone saying, hey, I saw Gunnar Nelson fight when he was only 4 fights into the UFC. Roy McDonald too. Roy McDonald doesn't really have that like prospect. He's already, I think, number 3 welterweight, but again, he's the number 3 welterweight. He's there for a reason. He's one of the best fighters on the planet. Tarek Saffiedine, one of the best fighters on the planet. You're going to want to see exciting fights. I don't get why I don't like watching Demetrius Johnson short. He's probably the best fighter alive right now. And you don't get to say that often. Like you're watching the greatest flyweight who ever lived fight. You could be watching the best welterweights. 3 of Rick Story. I'll put Rick Story in that. He's not a top. He's probably lower, like 8, 9, 10 welterweight, or he's definitely 10 to 15, but he's not in that. Tarek Saffiedine, Roy McDonald, and Gunnar Nelson are some of the best 170 pounders in the world right now. And Rick Story is no joke. Like I said, he could be on a 5-fight winning streak. He does have that win over Johnny Hendricks. So got a lot to choose from. Those are my picks. I got McDonald beating Saffiedine. I got Sunsao beating Caraway. I got Gunnar Nelson beating Story. And I'll give you Max Holloway. I'll give Max Holloway by first-round TKO. Max Holloway is no joke. I'll pick Ilir Latifi. I'll take Nicholas Backstrom over Mike Wilkinson, even though Mike Wilkinson is no joke. I believe he was on Tough Smashes. I think he was the one that hurt his retina and had to get taken out. I'll take Asunsa over Caraway, like I said. I'll take Chad LaPriest over Cedeno. I'll take Elias Theodora over Santos. Talib over Jiang Liang. And I'll take Mitch Gagnon. Hell, I'll take Gagnon. And I'll take Crookshanks over the Jaquani. So those are your fights. Those are my fight picks. I'm Jose Youngs. I'm sorry if I rambled a few times. It's my first time hosting. Maybe you'll see more in the future. Next time, I expect Josh to be back. People that tuned in late know Josh didn't get prettier. Jose Youngs just hosted. Have a good day, folks. Oh, and by the way, these picks were brought to you by BattleBond.com, the only supplements that have knockout power, the only ones. So those are my fight picks. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you drop me a tweet, if you disagree, agree, or just think I'm a fool and rambled too long, tell me, hey, you rambled too long. You're rambling long right now. But have a good day, folks. Have a good night. See you on the flip side.